My name is Yumari. This video will be recorded just so that we can put it on YouTube for other people who can't make it tonight. There were a couple of people who couldn't, like last minute, said they couldn't make it. That's my husband, Sean. He'll be doing the text management for me while I'm painting. So, say hello, Sean. Camera shy. Yeah, so tonight's challenge is really a big challenge for me because if you go onto any of my art on Instagram, pretty much everything I post is landscapes and here and there an animal portrait or something that was also on a different challenge or just something that I felt like painting. And even when I'm writing, sometimes I feel challenged in characters. So when this landed on a portrait challenge, I was like, okay, then the challenge is really on. But I'm actually excited about it, and I don't know, something about a limited palette really works for me. So maybe that's something you can remember as well when you're ever stuck for painting. Pick 3 colors, and they don't even have to feel like they make sense together. I'm going to guide you guys through what I'm going to do in the process, and that's why I also said I want to just allow a bit more room so that you can see how I think this through and how I get from this almost random selection of stuff to what I'm going to put on the page. Something that I wanted to share with you guys as well before I switch over, remove my face and go to the art page, is how my head works with art. Now, I haven't actually had this discussion with any other artists, so I would actually love any of your feedback. You're all sitting here, you are artists. We were created to be creative and to create something. So ever since I picked the challenge this afternoon, so I use a random number generator and then it gives me a number from the spreadsheet list that I have, and that was then the challenge that we picked. And then my brain starts putting these blocks together. So it'll play with the color options from what I know the limited palette was. It will think about the images that I got. I just typed in portrait because there wasn't a specific reference photo with a challenge. And because red was such a prominent color for me, this lady with the red hair, I'll show you on the paper now which one I picked as the main one. Thank you, Assistant Sean. He's passed me Exhibit A, not this one. This little girl or lady actually caught my eye the very first time. I think it's the top link. And she's got such a bright smile, but her splattering of freckles made me think about the splatter that we're going to do and the red hair. And the reason I picked the other pictures is initially I thought I wanted to have kind of long hair, but then I realized for this challenge, let's just stick to one reference photo and we can always later, I'll do another version, maybe change her hair and see and just challenge myself. But you guys are welcome to pick any of them. This is why I had this picture, to have the hair and just see if I were to play with the hair a little bit and mix the two together. So my brain's been incorporating images through the rest of the afternoon as I was watching my little ones. I have this idea of kind of the loose red hair and a feeling of the burnt umber and bringing in the ultramarine for shadows. So by the time I come and sit down, there's an idea of what I want to do and also a realization that what I think I'm going to do and what's going to end up on the paper is never the same thing. So it might be close, it might be completely different, and it's to give yourself freedom in that process to know, okay, I'm going to start at one point, but my ending point is going to be different, and that's okay. I think we're often disappointed in our artwork because it doesn't look how we thought it should look, but other people think it's beautiful because they just see the final painting. They don't see the process that we went through to get there and the mistakes we felt we made. And that's also why I want to do this live painting challenge, is that you guys can follow along with what could have been mistakes and see how I try and work them into the painting and to accept them and to go with that. So that's a little bit of the behind the scenes. I was also very tempted to trace the painting and just make it easier for my hand because eyes and proportions of faces challenged me a bit. I wanted to attend Diane's portrait painting session last week, but I couldn't make it. So I've painted one portrait previously, and that was the coffee painting of my husband. So without further ado, I feel like I should kind of crack my knuckles and get my game on. I'm going to switch off this camera view so that we can switch over to the art desk. I'm going to take a sip of the tea that I haven't drank anything of yet. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything, pop them in the chat. We're just going to mute everything. I'll switch over and then I'll see you guys on my art paper. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Hi, I'm over here. Okay, so we're going to break this up into two parts. And especially if you are someone who find it difficult to get long stretches of time, I often find I can manage 15 minutes, maybe up until 20, fairly easily with my schedule with the girls. Sean is an angel. He takes care of them for a little bit. And if they are niggling from the side, 15 minutes isn't that long. The challenge of 30 minutes, I'm now breaking that into two segments. So step one for me, especially with a limited palette, is to play with the colors a little bit. And because this is a new subject for me, to play with the subject also. So we'll keep an eye on the time, but I'm not going to be strict as in setting a full 30-minute timer and just working according to that. But that is something that has helped me. If you only have a certain amount of time and you feel like you don't want to go over that, setting a timer frees up your brain to just really focus on the painting and not be like, oh, am I over time? Am I over time? Do I have to go do this? So, you know, even if you're single and working and you're doing this as a quick coffee break in between work sessions, setting even just a 5-minute timer, giving yourself a little bit of time to ease out of that creative space, just frees up that time to really focus on what you're doing. What I've done is, this is a full palette, but I've moved 3 colors over here. I just want to take out one of these colors so I have a bit more space to work around with. So these are just the 3 colors I'll be using. It's just, if I have to hold them in my hands, I get frustrated. So I wanted to have them in a palette. And I'll be using my trusty spray bottle. And those of you, this just wets the paint. So the half pans are hardened, they dried, and that's the beauty of watercolor. I mentioned that in my previous videos as well. And we're going to do something similar to what we did in our very first session, where we played with how the colors mixes on the page, because I just want to get a feel for what they do when they come together. I know these colors fairly well already. I'm going to swatch them out for you and share a little bit of color theory as we do that. So I must just find my color wheel. I think I've misplaced it. Okay, I'll show you a different example. Yeah, you can take that one. It's not the proper one, but I'll show you guys just now. So vermilion is a very bright, like almost a fire truck red. You won't always have that exact color in your palette. So mine is called cadmium red light. It's just the version that I have that is the closest. Thank you. The closest to that color. And Donna, thank you. It's a very nice color palette. If you have a moment to type on the text, I'd love to know how you decided on these colors. So please do share with class how you picked burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and vermilion. So vermilion, or then cadmium red light, is towards the orange side of your color wheel. So it can tend towards almost a red orange. So there's a little bit of yellow in it almost already. So you'll see when we mix it with a blue, it's not going to give you a bright, vibrant red, because there's basically a bit of red, a bit of blue, and then a bit of yellow in it. And when we mix all 3 of the primary colors together, we get the grays in the middle. You see these tints, they become more and more gray. Here's a color wheel that I painted ages ago that you can just see how these colors interact. And basically, we're very close to having a complementary color scheme. Haha, nice one, Donna. Okay, that's a great reason to pick a color, right? So that's exactly what we did in the first video. I can't remember if you attended. Colors that you battle to use. So this is excellent. I love it. So blue and orange are the 2 complements on the color wheel. And that's actually a stunning color scheme to use, a way to pick colors. And burnt umber is it's just a brown. So as you add 2 complementaries together, they become more and more neutral, tending towards browns and grays here in the middle. So that's basically what we're going to be working with. And the reason why the vermilion or the cadmium red light won't be giving you a clear purple when it's mixed with a blue is because it's already tending towards yellow. So it's like we toned down the color already. So let me put down the ultramarine just so that you can see it. Another blue, instead of ultramarine, that's on towards the side of the color wheel, would be a cobalt, or even indigo, which is a very, very dark color, but it's beautiful to work with. Ultramarine is great for skies and really anything. It's a good color. And we're also basically working with almost a primary palette, except then for that surprise of burnt umber. And that's also a nice way. It's like to pick two primary colors and then a little bit of a surprise color. So burnt umber is a very nice neutral brown. And if you have this color in your palette, it's a beautiful way to tone down other colors, almost a vintage color effect. So all I did was I picked up my colors straight from my palette, put the thicker paint down at the top, and then cleaned my brush and added some water to fade it down so that we can get a good tonal value of those paints. Now I'm just going to play a little bit, and those of you who have watched my Skillshare class, this is what I call color plays. It's just painting on the page, and if this was a loose piece of paper like this, you would be able to cut it up in the end and it'll make beautiful little cards. I do it in my sketchbook because I like making notes about my colors, and then I can go back and remember why I did what I did. So I want to start off by showing you blue. I'm just mixing it on my brush, and you'll see there already it's coming in to a very purpley, browny, purple color. If you can see it there, and that's what I meant with it not being a bright mix, but it's actually perfect for our picture. If you look at this, and perhaps if anyone has battled with the reference photos, but they're in your email again, but just pop us a question, and Sean can just link the reference photos again in the chat. But I love how that red is warming up the blue and creating this kind of beautiful purple gray color there. So in my mind, I'm thinking we've got shadows. Now look, the colors that we have here, we're not going to get a realistic portrait. We're not going to go for realistic. So we're going to play with what we have. But I think we might be surprised with the colors that we managed to mix out of this. I especially want to see how vermilion and umber, the burnt umber, play together. Especially the thing with skin tones, a little that I know about it because I've watched a couple of classes in the past, is you really work with very light tones. You'll see as I add a lot of water to this mix, it becomes almost white, but it's those pastel colors that add depth and create color and the shading on your page. I want to mix it with a little bit more brown. So we're just playing. I'm mixing the colors on the page. I'm thinking that's a beautiful color for her hair, for the shading. You can even from that add in a bit more brown and make a really dark mix like that. And to get all the variations out of that, I'm cleaning my brush and just towards the one edge, adding water and then just touching it. And this is again an example of how watercolors will flow where there's water, and where it creates crisp edges along the line. So that's wet on dry, and this is basically wet into wet, just to recap those techniques. Now a nice trick, if you don't have any grays on your palettes, that's perfectly fine, because mixing a brown and a blue will typically give you a gray. Depending on which ones you mix will change the tonal value of the gray, so it will be a warmer gray, a bluer gray, a more neutral gray, and even so much as a very dark black. And the beauty of that is it's a black with character. You'll see here as I start mixing it, it becomes more neutral. And there's a beautiful, I just mixed it lighter, so there's a beautiful neutral gray. And like I've mentioned in one of the previous sessions, doing this, instead of adding another like plain color from your palette, rather mixing your gray pulls your whole painting together, because you're harmonizing your colors. You're using colors that is already there, and it just looks a little bit different than trying to bring in tube colors basically, or raw colors. I think I've got all my mixes. What I like to do is I make a little block of each color at the top so I can remember which ones it was that I used, and I'll come in just now just to label the colors. And on pages like these, I'll write notes for myself. I'll say, I like this, or this can work for that, or whatever. And it's a nice way then to keep track of what you're doing and what worked, and when few weeks or months down the line, you want to do the same thing, you can go back and remember, oh, that's what I did. I'm just quickly marking them out. This was just a really light version. So for example, what I would do is to say, remember water for light skin tones. And we're just going to mark these here, because you can more or less pick up the colors in the small swatches. I don't always mark them again, or I just use a shorthand version, like the first few letters. So this is cadmium red light, or your vermilion, ultramarine blue, and burnt umber. And I'm writing skew because I know the paint here at the bottom is wet. I just quickly want to check out the pencils that I've picked. Just want to find one's rolled in under here. Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Okay, there we have created a nice texture. That's fine. That's the beauty of a sketchbook. So let's start with the burnt umber. So what I would do is the same thing, press hard and go light. And I'm going to create a second line that I can wet with my brush so that I can see both what it looks like wet and what it looks like dry. And there's quite a significant difference. And you want to leave a bit of space there for that pigment to pull out. So that is burnt umber. I'll mark them just now. Let's do the blues. And just randomly, wherever you feel like doing it on your page. I like a bit of freedom. The dark blue technically isn't directly in our color scheme, but I've often used it as my sketching pencil, because even if it's not a watercolor pencil, but a non-soluble one, it somehow just blends in with watercolor beautifully, that you don't see those pencil marks under your paint. So in one of our sessions, we mentioned that you don't want to put your pencil drawing underneath too dark, because once you put your watercolor over that, it becomes like a sheet or a layer on top that locks in that pencil, so you can't then get those pencil marks out. And the trick to get past that is like a blue pencil. It somehow just doesn't show through as darkly. Here's ultramarine, but obviously if you're using a watercolor pencil, you've got the added benefit of it'll add a little bit of interesting color to your sketch, but it will blend in as well, so you won't have those harsh lines as much. So it's a fun way to do your underpainting or your undersketch before starting. And it's just interesting to note the difference here. But this Delft blue is actually very much the color that we got there. It's just little interesting things that if you were going to use more than one color, it's just good things to note. This one is called Deep Vermilion. So I had a pale vermilion and a deep vermilion in my palette or my pencil set, which I don't use these that much or that often, so I often discover new things. So I'm interested to see what this vermilion looks like and which one compares the best. I actually feel that doesn't have enough pigment. If you go in wet onto wet paper with your pencil, you'll see that it'll have a different effect on the paper as well, and that's also something to play with. So there's our deep vermilion and pale vermilion. It's going to look like this. So that's more orangey. So I think our pencils are going to give us a nice feel for some detail in the hair, for example, and so on. Okay, so those are my colors. The last thing that I want to do, to give you an idea, this process took about 11 minutes now. We're just keeping an eye on that. So if I were to do this painting, say someone commissioned me for it and I don't have a lot of time, I would do this planning and then at a next session, try and get 15 or 30 minutes to do the next step of my painting and break it up like that. So that's what you would do if you're really stuck for time. I'm quickly going to take these colors just out of the way. So because I'm not all that familiar with character or portrait paintings, the one thing I do know is that it's important. I remember from my mom at school, little grid lines. So I just want to get a feel for myself. What does her face look like? So I'm going to draw over this just so that my hand can get a feel, because we see an image in front of us and what our brain thinks that shape is and what the shape on paper is actually quite different. So an interesting exercise would be to take some tracing paper, or even if you don't have that, take normal printer paper over this and hold it up to a window so that you can trace over it and then see the pencil version of it. because it's often surprising what's actually going on with the shapes and where they're at, because I'm going to transfer this freehand to my paper. But if you wanted to do a more specific version of it, you could do tracing to transfer it, or then the grid method. I know people use that you divide it into blocks and then you focus on a block at a time and transfer that onto your paper. That's her nose. Noses are always weird. Nice dimples. So as I'm doing this, I see here there's a nice deep shade of red. I want to get a feel for her eyes. And then we're going to start drawing and just take it as it comes. One thing that I decided that I want to do, so I'm going to put down a very loose pencil outline just to give those proportions for me. I want to get her neck in and a bit of the top. And then typically in watercolor, you work from light to dark because watercolor is a transparent medium. So like we saw here, you would want to start with your lightest value. But something that I've learned from an artist called Angela Fair, she's a Canadian artist. She does a lot of abstract landscape paintings mostly. And she actually starts her abstracts at the focal point with the darkest value, because then as you work around the darkest value, you can balance the painting around it, and it's going to remind me that's where I'm working towards. So I'm probably going to start with the values in the eyes and then work it from there, but let's see. So enough talk. I need to switch this around actually, because I'm going to do a portrait. Let me we'll probably do the sketch, I think, and then be at a point where let's see, where we switch the Zoom meeting. If there's any questions at this point, feel free to shout or type it. I might not hear your shout. So I'm just going to start with the basic shape of the face and see what happens from there. So I'm aware of kind of, it should be in this space of the page. We're not worried so much about this rule of thirds that I mentioned in the past, because this is a portrait, so it's our main focus. So we're just going to do it like this photograph is. And Unsplash is really great for that because their photos are beautiful and they are available to use without copyright infringement issues. So that's a nice place to go. The trick always for me with watercolor is you want to work lightly, but if you work so lightly that you can't see your sketch afterwards, that's a bit tricky. So I'm just trying to very loosely mark in the lines and just trying to draw what I see as best as I can. And then I'm going to adjust it a little bit. And you can still erase your watercolor pencil. It's not, you know, like working with pen. And what I like about this method is it's going to add your own character. Embrace those little imperfections and uncertainties and things like that. Just something that I've noticed is, for example, if you look at the eyes and the ears, so you're going to make sure that your eyes are kind of at a third of where the earlobe is. So that's always something that is not necessarily what you would expect. I'm working from the nose up, just kind of putting that. And like I said, a good way to practice this is to trace it. I've always thought that tracing is kind of cheating because, hey, then you've just got a slap bang carbon copy of your painting on the paper. And having done it a few times now, I've realized, oh, it's not that simple. You still have to pick your colors, and this nose is too high. I'm noticing that. So I'm going to go in with an eraser just quickly. You still have to pick your colors. You still have to remember where those lines go. It's actually just a nice way to give yourself some guidelines. So maybe, Dion, I know you have a lot of experience with portraits. If you have a free hand, to just type where do you start? Do you do a grid sketch? Do you do a trace? I would just love to hear what your starting point is, and let's learn from each other and see. As I'm painting this just quickly, or drawing, I see that, you know, we can easily make these dimples too dark. Spending a lot of time on the nose. Let's leave that for now. So you're going to realize where there's some tricky areas and then come in and correct them when we paint. So I'm just looking at the eyes, trying. A good trick as well, if you struggle with proportions, is to use your pencil and to see how far is that line on the eye. So I'm going to take it from the tip of the nose, and I'm taking it there from the tip of her eye, the inside of her eye, and that's going over the nostril, and to check my proportions. So then that would be more or less there. So let's try that, and then start with the eye. And that's a nice one if you're drawing urban sketching and you're drawing from real life. That is one way that you can use to get your proportions right, because you would use your pencil in front of you and do that. So I'm just going to make sure the same with the other eye, holding the pencil straight. Because her head is tilted, it's not actually exactly the same. So let's do that. And what I'm also finding is things that I've watched in the past, it kind of comes up as you paint or as you draw. You remember, oh, I remember something about that, let's try it. And that's where it's good to watch something, but it's really only until you've tried it that you can figure out how it actually works. Okay, that's good enough, I think. I realize you can't probably see much of what I'm sketching. Okay, cool. Thanks, Diane. Diane's tip is to focus on the eyes and to choose a focus eye and to measure from there. Okay, that's a great tip. Thanks, Diane. I'm going to keep that in mind. If you want to post your video, I know you did, I think you said the recording would be available. Diane paints in oils and some acrylics and some watercolor, obviously, because it's here. So yeah, that was also a great one. I think those eyebrows are a little bit too big. Okay, and then for me personally, I reach a point where I can feel, okay, I'm starting to niggle too much in the details, and that's just my personality. So I am going to force myself to put down my pencil soon. This is actually taking shape quite nicely. I just want to see, tweak the jaw a little bit. And it's probably going to feel funny when I'm done with it, because portraits for me still struggle, but you have to start somewhere. And yeah, let's quickly see. Let's use our pencil trick for the forehead size. So I'm going there from in between the brows. And it's actually very similar. Okay, I eyeballed that quite well. I'm just drawing in the hairline and the outline of her hair. I might have actually put this too low. Let's see if her bun fits in. We're going to kind of make that go off the page and probably add a bit of more gentleness around the face, but let's see. Quickly going to etch in her neck. Yeah, I hope you guys are trying this along with me. I know you can't see much. Is there a question?
Yes.
So it's important to look at the shapes in the face to help with proportions. Yeah, I must admit, I struggle to identify those shapes. I still want to go sit when I'm done with this and trace it and just see what those actual shapes are, because it feels like my brain is still tricking me into thinking it's one shape, but it's really another, especially with the chin. It's either feeling too pointy or too big, but yeah, let's see. Okay, so I've got some basics there. It's feeling really weird looking at the pencil. You can see there, I don't know if you can see anything at all, a little bit, yeah. So, okay. The next step is going to be to start painting. We've got 8 minutes left before Zoom is going to kick us out. So I'll tell you guys if we're going to pause, I think, for just having as much time as possible at the end of the session. Let's start with the first layer. And I think I'm actually, like Diane said, and that was my initial feeling as well, to start with the eyes on the page and work it from there. So let me just get my palette here. Okay, just taking a sip of water. If you're painting along, won't you just pop me a I'm painting or I'm watching? I'd love to know who's doing what, then I can also just cater my comments. This is a nice little ceramic palette, but as I mentioned before, you can use a ceramic plate or any plastic palette. And for those of you desperate for supplies, Jim Nets at Linrich Mall is opening this Friday already. Archneers and places in Joburg are opening on Monday. I think we'll all have to go out with masks, but yeah. And by the way, for those of you tuning in internationally, we're based in Pretoria, South Africa. Yeah, Sage, Dion, well done. Donna, thank you for watching. I'm glad you popped by. I don't know why you put your painting supplies away, Donna. Tisk, tisk. Okay, so what I'm doing, because we have weird colors for this painting, but I don't want them to be too weird. I'm just mixing up a light, like a, what would probably be my skin tone, like adding a bit of burnt umber to my red. That's just because I'm not going to start with that. I remember that now, but I just want that available. And I'm just using my extra piece of paper to just kind of test that color. And it's going to be very light, but I like that as a starting point for the skin. And I want a little bit of that gray. So blue is a beautiful thing to just drop in like that onto your painting. It feels weird, but it's going to blend in beautifully with our colors. So I'm going to leave that light blue on there and then just mix. We need a place to eat. Donna, art feeds the soul. Now I hear you. I hear you. That is a challenge. I'm mixing up the dark gray. So I want to go really dark for her eyes, for the inner pupil, and then I'm going to take really dark umber. So it's good to take a good look at your reference photo and really see what colors do I really see. If you use a color picker on your computer, that could be useful. I'm mixing this up really darkly. So I'm going to use the umber. Let's see my colors. I'm having a look at my umber and vermilion mix and looking at her eyes and thinking, maybe add a little bit of that color in there for the outer iris, because you want to go from a lighter color, a dark to light, and then a very dark pupil in the middle. So let's mix that up a little bit. And this is just helping me think what colors I'm going to use. So let's see if I can paint the eyes before we're going to switch over. Now this is a method I used the other day when I was painting a lion. I haven't checked if there's any better way to do it in watercolor, but I like to wet the area of the eye with clean water, because that's going to have the colors blend more evenly together. So my water isn't completely clean there, but that's fine. It's just my brush having a little bit of pigment, but then you can actually see where I put my water. So I'm going to go in with actually my darkest mix. So I'm just picking up the umber straight from the pan, and this is called working to wet. So on that ring of the eye, I'm adding the color and letting the color flow onto the inside, and I'm going to be picking up a bit of this water. So this is a way to fix mistakes. You're drying your brush, cleaning it, drying it, and then it will pick up that extra color. And then I'm going to come in with this reddish brown mix, and let's see how that works. So I'm just seeing what's happening on the page and kind of just, yeah, experimenting. So we don't always, especially with watercolor, but that's what I enjoy. I've been thinking it's like having a conversation with a good friend. You know, you trust each other, but it's not always going to go in the direction that you expect. It can surprise you in good ways and sometimes in not so great ways. So you really just have to give it some space. I'll close up my painting here, and I'm going to do the outer ring. Just want to add in a bit more color so you'll see that it'll flow in, and then we're going to just quickly restart this meeting while these eyes dry anyway, because I'm going to wait for them to dry before doing pupil. Yeah, so I'm very happy with that. So I'm just putting more, like really picking up the pigment directly from my palette and dabbing that gently around the edges. I'm using a size 12 brush, but if you're more comfortable with a smaller brush, you can do that. Okay, I like that gradient of color. I think we're quickly going to restart the meeting, and then you're going to just go back into your email. Just give me 2 minutes to go out and back in, and then you should be able to re-enter the meeting. If not, just pop me an email. We keep an eye on our email. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. 2 minutes, very little. Just wait 1 minute. Yeah, maybe while we're waiting, if you want to pop me your favorite subject to paint, even if you haven't painted a lot, what do you currently feel comfortable with, and what do you currently feel challenged with that you feel, oh, I'll never touch that? Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about that. For me, portraits was, don't want to touch that, but it's, I'm moving towards a space where I want to equip myself to do children's illustrations and children's books. So I have been looking at it in different ways. So that's why I'm actually very excited about this. And my favorite thing is landscapes, but I think you guys might know that already. Yeah, so if you want to share that in the chat, I'd love to hear it. I'll just wait for anything else. Donna loves painting flowers. Yeah, flowers are also fun. I do enjoy them. Just want to wait a moment longer. I'm missing 3 people still. 4 people, missing 4 people. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the dark of the people. So this is mostly dry, and then I'll just recap. That's so funny how it's the opposite. I wouldn't have guessed from the landscapes that I've seen you paint, but well done for digging into them and painting things that terrify you. I think that's our biggest growth point as artists, and I think that's something that I've realized recently is we often get this discomfort feeling, feeling uncomfortable and unsure and petrified, and that's actually the space where we need to lean into, where we do our best work or at least get our growth. If we get too comfortable, then we miss out on that growth area. I'm missing 2 people, but I'm going to start, I think, with the next layers. So my thinking is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a couple of dark colors, and it's going to feel weird, and then we're going to blend those colors out onto the face. So what I'm trying to do is to identify the shapes of the shadows. So I know this is very prominent, it catches my eye immediately, the shape of the eye, the nose, and then these levels. And I remember my sister did art at school, I never did. And they did this very psychedelic painting where you literally trace these levels of shadows on the face. And I've seen watercolorists doing that with portraits, and it's a beautiful effect for me. So I'm going to see if I kind of do that effect, what happens. So we're just going to be playing. So that's where I mixed up this muted red of mine. We're going to work towards that as well. I'm going to use a darker version of that with a little bit of blue for those dimple shadows. So I'm just picking up that color so I've got a bit more control over what I'm doing. Let's see how that is in the shot. And I see my painting is out of focus. I'm just going to see if I can fix that. Let's see if we move something, get it to focus, and then move it back. Is that getting better? Okay, it looks like we've got a little bit of a lagging issue rather than a focus issue. I'm hoping it gets better. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think it's a focus issue. It might be an internet connection thing, which is funny seeing as we've got fiber, but I hope you guys can see enough to follow along. I'll try my best to explain. So I'm mixing up that kind of purpley red, but I've got a bit of umber in here as well, just to make sure that it is really toned and muted. And I know from chatting with my friend Lisa or Elizabeth Tristan, colors on faces and people are often quite surprising. So you do see purple more often than you would think. So I'm just going to go in with a loose line and trying to capture that little dimple there. And then I'm going to tap off the color so I can keep that for later. Okay, I see our quality issue has improved. And I'm just going to wash this out with my brush and then come in with more color. So I'm just kind of seeing what shadows I see there, and it feels really weird and really strange, and that's fine. That happens with paintings. We've got this messy middle where it really isn't what we expect it to be, and we're unsure, and you just have to stick through it, because the worst thing that can happen is it can get worse and it's still ruined, or you can push through it and actually see, oh, that fixed it. So I'm going to hero these colors that we've got by really, I'm putting in some clean bits of ultramarine there. I'm going to come into her beautiful red mouth color just now, but I'm just quickly identifying that nose shadow there, a little bit of shadow there. So I'm just painting those shapes, and I love where those colors are flowing. That's going to create that looseness, and because we don't have the mouth in yet, this is feeling really weird. But I'm now just going to paint with what I see and take my palette out of my way. And I think it is time for some splatter. I love splatter, and I'm so happy it's on the list, because it frees up that kind of, I want to try and capture specific details. So we are going for a loose portrait. So hey, splattering ultramarine blue all over a human face, there's no better way to loosen up like than that. And I'm just going to kind of use that splatter and fade them out, because blue is a beautiful background to the warm orange in the foreground, because it's complementary colors. It's going to make it pop, make the foreground stand out. I'm going in with a very daring dash of red. Let's put in her very red lips and exaggerate that redness. So you're going to keep some elements loose, and you're going to keep some elements a bit more specific, like the mouth. We want it a bit more defined. Oh, I didn't draw the teeth. We'll come back into that. And then adding a bit more of the red there. Let's see, it is starting to take shape. The advantage I found of painting to a camera is you actually get a better idea of where those details go and what you're missing. So now I'm just picking up that really light red wash and just red and umber, kind of putting in a few more of the shapes, and especially around the eyes. Again, there's the dark shadows. I'm going to come back with that purple color. I really like what that shadow is doing, and I'm going to come into her hair just now, because that's also a main defining element. There's her throat. So I'm just, at this point, I almost have no color on my brush, just to kind of define, and it's picking up the splatters. And I'm doing a dry brush here, which is going to give it that extra loose feel. Let's see, I want to come in with a bit of umber, because it's so neutral, just to define the nose on a couple of strokes, define the nostrils. So I'm just going with the darker elements first, really. And you can tell that I'm just splattering a bit more, especially over there, by squinting your eyes, and like squinting at the picture, and then you'll see that dark pop out. What I want to do, especially around the eyes, is we're going to keep the whites of her eyes very prominently. So I want to make sure to define around that, and that's basically what's called negative painting. So you're putting in the darks so that the light will pop out. And this is now where my pencil sketch is very handy, because I can just kind of follow that contour, and I'm just smoothing that with some clean water, just so that it's not that strong. And there, at this point, it's now starting to feel a bit more like a face for me. So that's where we've pushed through, and push through that discomfort, and just yeah, start seeing it take shape into something more closer to what we want. I'm going in with really bold color, because this is one of the focal points. Like Jan also said, we want the eyes as a focal point. So I'm kind of layering these three main colors that we picked. I'll come back in with pen detail for the lashes. And very gently, there's some laugh wrinkles there, putting that in. And if you ever feel that you make a mistake, the best time to fix it is when it's dry. So I'm happy with this, but if you work in those fine details and you're not happy, take your paper towel or any tissue use a clean brush, wet that area and lift it with a paper towel, and then let it dry completely before trying to fix it. Otherwise, you're going to get really weird watermarks. I'm really loving what this kind of dry brush technique is doing there. Actually, it's kind of by accident, and I'm just going with it. It's the color that's still on my brush. And the shape of her mouth is different from the reference photo, and that's perfectly fine. That is what I wanted to do, to have some difference in there. I'm going to give myself a little bit more leeway and just for a second, go over to her hair. So I'm just using a clean brush and I'm wetting that area, and I'm actually going to use my spray bottle and spray that. I've been painting this part now for 8 minutes out of interest's sake. So yeah, time can go quite quickly or actually slower than you think. So I want that kind of loose strand effect. That's why I was considering still kind of feeling going for loose hair, but let's see. I'm going in with, wow, vermillion. I'm going to come and pick up some of that color just now. And I know her bun is somewhere around there. And there where the hairline is, I'm going to make really fine little feathery motions for the hair. She's reminding me of Phoenix, I think, in X-Men. We'll fix that just now, and we'll work with that. So because we have too much color, I'm cleaning my brush, wiping it off, and there are these beautiful strands of golden hair that I don't have a color for in our limited palette. So I'm going to do that. Okay, that's flicking the color away. Let's see, let's get some of the color out. I want to wet the top part of my page so that isn't happening. And we'll come and move this out just now. Let's see what we can do. I'm also going to work with some white gel paint, so you will see that. And if I'm really not happy with that color, let's add some interesting texture. I'm dabbing it with my paper towel, and that's just to demonstrate what I told you earlier about being able to take out that color and fix mistakes. So we're going to come in and define this with the shadows. So now we've got this lovely face, and now the hair feels a bit more like we've messed it up, but we're going to push through and you'll see us fixing it. I must now see where that ear is, because we want to define something about the shape of the hair and the face. Isn't quite right. I think we want to define it more a bit there, but we'll see just now. And we're going to move this color. So moving it into the background is going to give us a bit of leeway to fix what our eyes currently interprets as the hair. And I might move, it's also because she doesn't have brows at the moment. So once we put in the brows, I think it's going to get better. What I want to do here is to use some straight umber and put in those shadows in the hair. And I'm trying to kind of just follow that wavy motion of what I see on the reference photo, and especially there where I see darks, and then she's got that beautiful bun, and I'm just kind of using a loose, in this case it's not kind of in it off the page, which is fine, that's not what it is. Just trying to link up those hairs over there. And Donna, that's actually where I'm quite grateful for your color palette, because especially if it's a new subject, this frees you up to not want to do it perfectly the first time, because you can't, because it's not realistic colors, and that is fine. So I'm going to use a shadow color and just see if I can get this feeling a bit more like hair. Too dark, let's see. I'm going to go with layering a bit. Just working on those fine lines. See what it's looking like. It's looking very funny. I might step back from it for a moment and just put in those eyebrows first. And once this bottom layer is dry, that's especially the other thing with this wet into wet technique, is it can feel really strange and funny. And then when you come onto that layer, once it's dried, it suddenly just takes shape. So stick with me. Just defining that ridge a little bit more. It's starting to move in the right direction. Obviously her ears aren't in either, which is also making it funny. And we want to add a bit of, I think a bit of a shadow here. Over there. So I'm just for a moment focusing on where the shadows are and letting it blend and do its weird thing. There's a nice curl in there. This should actually be darker, that highlights in the wrong spot. So you learn to observe, and this is something that was very tricky for me in the beginning. And again, that's really where tracing and even looking at other like process videos like this helps a lot to see how someone gets to that process. I'm going to go in really dark umber with a bit of ultramarine for the eyebrows. And this is actually a good point. I accidentally picked up some vermillion, that's fine. A good point to start using the watercolor pencils if you have some to work together with me, because that's now where we're going to add a little bit of that shape. This is too black, so I'm picking up more brown, and you can prevent that by actually just dabbing it on your page before doing that. And I'm trying to, just on your test page, to check your colors. And because these are so dark, it might look weird and it might just actually draw the attention to the eyes because of that contrast, because we've got a really nice area there. And this is coming together. We'll get there. Actually, let's see if I want to use pencil. So you can use a hairdryer to dry this area and go immediately into it. But if you're not finished with the painting, it's a nice way to just kind of leave that and let it dry by itself while you work on something else, especially if you feel that you're battling with it. So I'm just quickly mixing up that purple. No umber this time, just the red and blue. And I just wanted to find the area of her chin against her neck a little bit more. I've given her more of a pointed chin. I want that out just now. And we're going to use the clean brush again to just fade out that shadow. And just have that in there. Okay. I want to define her ears. So there was this one, like that there. Using the kind of purple color and adding a little bit of red. And I just kind of want to hint at it. I don't want too much focus on the ears. I know she's got that earring, but we're going to leave that out. Okay, so what I do is I'll sit back a bit. You might even hear it in the audio on my voice, just to kind of see it from far away. I realize that the shadow around her mouth is too strong. So I'm coming in with water and just reworking that a little bit. And I'm going to use my paper towel and just pick up some of its color. Now, because this is student grade paper, you've got a little bit less leeway. And just be careful that you don't use a color side of your paper. But that's fine. We'll balance that out just now. I think let's quickly put in the pupils. I want to splatter a little bit of freckles. So I'm going to do a combination of kind of like a brown red. Just splattering a bit. Let's have some fun and just plunk that in there. The teeth I still need to define. So this probably goes a bit over that 30-minute challenge. I could leave it like this. We are now together with my color testing. We're now almost at the 30-minute mark, but this painting has now been busy for 15 minutes. So it depends on where you want to start that challenge. But for me, part of the process is figuring out what I do with the colors. I'm going to finish this because we do have time, but just out of interest sake, if this is where you would stop the painting because that's where you had time, it's a good point to do that, because everything can dry now, and then when you come back with fresh eyes and you can look at it afresh and just see, you know, what do you want to tweak. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to not finish your painting in one session. It's often good to come back with fresh eyes. I've got the splatter that's wet now, so I just want to take the hair dryer. I hope it doesn't mess with the sound too much, otherwise we'll mute it, so Sean will tell me. Okay. Not everything is dry, but it's dried enough. Just a tip for how you know. You'll see that the paint is still shiny where it's wet, and it's matte there where it's dried already. And this area, we did add a lot of water, so you see that the paper is buckling a bit, but it should flatten out once we're done. If it doesn't, you can wet the back of your paper gently with a spray bottle, and just put it underneath a couple of books on a clean surface or inside a sketchbook for that to just press flat again. I'm going to work on the eyes first because they're obviously missing their detail, and I think having that detail is going to help us just know which part of the rest of the painting we need to focus on and define, and what we can leave. The beauty about a painting is there's actually a lot of things that we can leave unsaid, like this area of the ears is just looking like random shapes, but if you look from afar, your eye will fill that in. So I'm just going to do pupils, mixed burnt umber and ultramarine, and I drew them a bit differently than my reference photos. I'm going to have to improvise a bit because the eyelids are more over the pupils than mine are, and I'm using that same color to define the makeup that she has on her lashes. That's what gives it that dark value. And you always want to repeat a color that you're using somewhere else in your painting. Again, it comes to that harmony. I'm going to come in just now with a little bit of pen and pencil detail. Just want to define that shadow, deepen the crease of the eye. And I'm always a bit stuck on the lashes. You have to pay careful attention what direction they're really going. And I'm just being very loose and not adding a lot of them, really just to define that shape of the eye. So I'm going to leave it at that. So her eyes in the painting is a bit more squinty. Mine is a bit more open. That's fine. It's making it a new character. So that's perfectly fine. And once this is dry, then I'm going to use a bit of my white pen to add that highlight in the eye. If you don't, I would use pencil and just for yourself draw out the shape where the highlight, that bit of white, the very small bit of white should stay. I'm going to take my blue pencil that I was sketching with earlier that I have misplaced, and I did reorganize my desk just yesterday. Let's use ultramarine. I'm going to be careful with the teeth because I know it can be funny with shadow. So I'm actually just going to use a normal click pencil, and I just quickly want to draw in the shape of her teeth on her mouth. And I think actually that I need the mouth a bit more closed, but let's see if I can fix that. I know from when I was painting Sean the other day, but that was from real life. I battled with the teeth and the size. So Dion, any tips? Be welcome, thank you. Yeah, but I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun painting along. I must not remember which one were the two front teeth. I know you can't see exactly at the moment. I'm noticing things like how far are the teeth from the bottom lips, how there's space for the gums at the top, and they see. Actually counting the teeth, 1, 2, 3, 4, how many I can see to each side, to make sure that is it symmetrical, although the amount that you see of each tooth is different. The reason I'm doing this is I want to paint very carefully around that area. So this is now where, you know, the painting can get a bit more finicky because the teeth really defines it. I might just decide to leave that. Let's see. Man, I'm scared of teeth. I'm so worried it's going to mess up the rest of the painting. I'm quickly going to go into the hair. I actually like this white space of the mouth. It's something that I've seen on some loose watercolor or very simplified watercolors that they leave, say if there's glasses, they leave that area white within the frame of the glasses. So I'm just coming in with some watercolor pencil, and this is my preferred way of using watercolor pencil. There's a lot of people who do painting from scratch with watercolor pencil. I'm just using it to define some areas, and I'm loosely using the same shape that I see in her hair. Okay, I'll read that in just a sec. Thanks, Dion. I'm going to have to focus and think for a second, but I hear what you're saying. The teeth is really just reflect the area that makes a lot of sense. And I think, you know, the way to do this, actually, I'm busy with what's called the 100-day project, and you can pick any theme for it. I picked landscapes because I didn't want to complicate it too much. I'm just going in with my pencil a little bit. You see, this is why I don't paint for longer than 15 minutes. I start getting bored with my own painting, so I want to start finishing this off now. But you actually, you can pick a theme, or you can just paint anything, whatever you fancy for 100 days in a row. But doing that actually has you practice the subject. And I think I should, you know, at some point sit and just paint a bunch of different teeth, not necessarily 100 of them. But if you find something challenging, paint a lot of it and you will get better at it. But also focus on what you like and what you enjoy, because so this is where I feel. I'm just going to, the long hair I had in mind, I'm bringing in some wavy hair around her face. So I am improvising. I like this. I like how it's filling up my painting. It's something that I feel is missing. So don't be afraid to do your own thing. And we're going to bring in our watercolor just now and just balance that out, and then do a couple of pen details, and then I am going to be happy. I'm bringing in a little bit of the blue lines here for the hair. I'm just adding that in, and I'm just taking my water and blending that out slightly. We're going to make her hair a bit thicker because she does look like she's got, I don't know, hair loss or something at the moment. Yeah, so there's things that you're going to learn and that you're going to think, okay, next time I would like to do this differently and so on. And that is great. We can't always make the perfect painting the first time. I have to keep reminding Mrs. Sean. If I could show you his face right now. We always have this discussion where I think, no, I'm going to go in the first time and it's going to look exactly the way that I want it to look. And it never does. And that's fine. Stop kicking at me, husband. We'll start an episode of Behind the Bar. Okay, so now I must just think for a moment what I'm doing here. I'm defining hair. And I say this often in my workshops. It's so important to sleep on what you've painted. This is Sean's piece of wisdom. It's a rule that he instigated in our house, that I am not allowed to decide my final opinion of a painting until I've slept on it and look at it the next morning. Yeah, I'm looking at the camera and I think I'm actually happy with it. It's loose enough. I'm still scared of the teeth. I'm going to leave it white. Okay, I'm quickly going to take a little bit of pen. You guys are welcome to vote in the chat. If you want me to put in the pen, I'm just quickly going to dry these hairs. So think about it and vote. Paint the teeth or no? You guys are killing me. Seriously, people, I have to do the teeth, really? Fine, we'll look at it just now. We've got 10 minutes left of a Zoom meeting. I'm just quickly going in with a couple of details. Yeah, I don't know. I can just go with pureed food, you know. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having my back. Okay, we will do it just now. Let's see quickly. I want to highlight the lashes with some pen. So I'm focusing on those details. That's my focal areas, because pen is very sharp. So it draws your eye there, and that's great. You want to use that. Just looking at that shadow and definition of the eye. A little bit of detail around the mouth. Sharpening those corners. I'm going to come in with a white pen just now, and I'm adding a little bit of that detail in the eye, in the iris, those little lines, and just a little bit of the texture on the brows. And yeah, this hair is baffling me, but I think it's because we don't quite have the hair color. I'm, you know, too stuck in what's on the painting. But I think it's good to see here. We want that bit of shadow there and then the hair going out there. Let's leave that fairly loose and just add in a bit of the lines there. Okay, so teeth, reflected shadows. I'm actually, for the first time, going to take a smaller brush. This is a size 4. No pressure, I've got 8 minutes before Zoom kicks it us out, and I'm not sure if everyone wants to really come back in for another one. So let's get to gum color. So if anyone complains that this is not real life, then you can see me painting teeth and being nervous about it. So, okay, I drew the shapes of the teeth and I'm painting the gums around it. And there's some space at the bottom. It should be more purple. So, Diane, what color do I put on the teeth? What would that be? Is it like, I don't have yellow. So would I add a very pale blue shadow just to define a bit of the teeth? That makes sense. If it shouldn't be blue, stop me now.
Skin tone,
Reflected, yeah. So we've got some blue in the skin tone. So yes, thank you, Sean, for reading me that. So we're working on reflected skin tone. So there's a bit of blue, there's a bit of red in our color scheme. I know it's weird. Why does this make me think of that weird chick in the Hunger Games with the funky hair and the weird colored styles? And I'm very loosely just putting in the shadows, and I think that that could actually work, although I might have put the front teeth in skew. I'm sure it broke it. Okay, that's enough of the teeth. I'm going to come in with some white pen. Where's my white? Where's my white? There it is. You can always use white paint to fix things like that as well, though, if you want to go over that a bit. I mustn't mess now. Okay. Just putting some highlights in the eyes, a little bit of lines around the lids, definitely some reflection on the lips. And okay, that's where her ear was supposed to be, just around the chin. I'm really picking a random couple of areas, and it's just small strokes, or sometimes even just a little bit of like little dots, just adds interest. And definitely in the hair for some highlights. So we've blue grayish for teeth. Okay. Thanks, Diana. That's kind of what I went with. Yeah, I think I just was too hasty in drawing the teeth in terms of where they should be, and that's something that I would like to just see with the light box tracing it. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to add a last bit of splatter, and I think call it done. We have 5 minutes, excuse me, of the Zoom session left. I actually think there's enough splatter on there. Finished. I think it's finished, guys. Give me a thumbs up. Happy. Very loose. Very weird. But yeah, given that we made up her hair and I haven't painted teeth and freehanded it, I'm going to be happy tomorrow morning. At the moment, I'm not sure what I feel like. So let's switch off this camera and I'll come back to FaceTime.